All right, we're here. We are live. Welcome in. It is Monday, November 13th. Mandy is with us there. Mandy,
Hi.
good afternoon, good evening. What is going on? What's new with you? What happened this weekend? Talk to the people.
I actually watched a YouTube video on how to make my hair look Hollywood glam because I was going to a fundraiser where that was the theme. And if you know me, I mean, obviously, if you watch the show, I'm not like a Hollywood. I don't know how to do that kind of stuff with my hair. I was never taught. I never went to like hair curling school or anything like this. I've tried my whole life. It's not my jam. But I watched a tutorial and I think I crushed it. I wish I would have given you pictures so you could see it. I was like the curly haired girl that I never knew I could be. It was it was so wonderful. And it was a fundraiser for Corazon del Vita, which is they represent 10 orphanages in Mexico. And we raised a whole bunch of money. I think we raised like $400,000 for the
Wow.
orphanages. And it was really fun. It was fun and it was small and it was awesome. So that was Saturday night. It was at the US Grant, which, is a historical, really cool hotel in San Diego. So everybody had their Hollywood glam on. And Scoot, my husband Scoot, he dressed as like the bodyguard. He went as like presidential style. So he had black and white on. I had a fake mink fur, which I know he'll probably steal from me because he likes to wear those like at poker nights and stuff. So it was fun. I was very proud though of my hair, which I don't think I will ever be able to do again, but it was super fun.
Congrats. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What
I
about
like
you?
it.
Did you curl your hair this weekend? What'd you do, Monty?
Yep. The curl, if you can see it, the curl is kind of falling out now. So the curls are no longer there. So this weekend, what did I do? I did some unpacking with the move. I went to National Speakers Association. They had an event here in Las Vegas. I went to that event. I My soccer team from LA was playing in a tournament here, so I went to go support them. I watched a little
Mm.
football yesterday. Just
Did you
continue to
did your
unpack.
team win? Did
We did
Washington
not
win?
lost
I'm
in the
sorry.
last second. But our rookie or our young quarterback is progressing well, so that's encouraging. But our coaching is just very unimaginative, just very old and passe. So we're kind of stuck. But I also went shopping for a sofa on Friday night. This store up here, I think it's called RC Willie. And
Oh.
I went in and you have to go to the clearance and you can get like two, three, four, $5,000 off some items that are on clearance. So I went there and I was looking and I saw a couple options. I was able to get a pretty good deal, so I'm pretty excited about that. That was fun.
Ooh.
That was good. What else did I do? Yeah,
What'd you
that
do?
that
You L shape, love seat? Like what are we working with? What'd you
Yes,
do for you?
yes. So it's like a little bit of an L-shaped sofa, but then you put the button and it reclines, and there's like two different spots that recline with like the centerpiece or the
Oh.
side piece, and it's all high tech where they have like your charging ports, so you can just plug in your phone into the sofa and like charge and everything. It's so interesting. So we'll see. Gets delivered this week. So that'll be something cool. So that was exciting. Just kind of because you're just doing stuff like that. I'm trying to think what else
You had a
besides.
busy weekend. All I did was curl my hair. Yeah,
Yes,
that's a
like
lot.
but you went to events and everything and things like that. So I did. Yeah, that was the weekend.
That sounds like a great weekend. And you're getting settled into Las Vegas. For people that don't know, Amani earlier this year said, I think I'm going to make a change. I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden, his house in LA was on the market. And then all of a sudden, he bought a house in Vegas. And then a week later, he moved. It was the quickest thing ever.
It's
And
very
and
fast.
you're there now for a week. So how you're
Mhm.
getting settled in? All right.
It's a whirlwind. Yes, yes, it is. It's good. It's very good. It's just a whirlwind. So next week when we broadcast, you can talk to me about the commute because I commute back and forth to Fullerton to continue teaching with my students. So yeah, all good, exciting, and just different. Change is good. Change is a little bit difficult, but it's good.
Awesome. Well, speaking of change,
Yes.
our guest is the king of change, and he does it so well and such a transformative way. So today we have a multi-book author,
Oh
a
yes.
playwright, a
Hmm.
leading chief HR executive in multiple
Hmm.
industries. So
Yep.
technology, hospitality, I mean, all of the industries. He's a father, he's a partner, he's a dog owner, he's a friend. I think we should bring the author of The Perfect 10 Cookbook, Party Style and Regular Cookbook, Tim Mulligan, to the stage.
Hey,
Yes. Yes. So here you are. Round of
and
applause for Tim right there.
thank you.
So, Tim, you got to do that again. So, for those of you listening, the cover of the book of the Perfect 10 Cookbook has Tim with his two hands. So when he just joined the stage, he did his two high fives the way they have it on the screen. It's so great, so awesome.
Hi.
Mandy, I think you should start us off just because you like to take it back. So we'll let you start off. I have a list of questions for you, Tim. Don't be scared.
I'm
And
ready.
let's go.
Well, Tim, welcome. Where are you? Can you tell us about where you're at right now and why you are where you're at?
I'm currently in the world's smallest hotel room, and this is not a knock because I actually love this hotel. I'm in Manhattan. I'm here for work. My company Ben Labs has an office here in New York, so I had meetings today. But I'm also doing a little reconnaissance for a little project I have coming up, which we'll probably talk about, which is a play. So I'm here in New York doing as I often do, multitasking in a day job and about 4 different side projects, all in one beautiful weekend, long weekend in New York. So I'm here in Manhattan.
I love it. You're doing all the things. You're doing all the things. Well, let's go way back. I want to go to the way back machine to you being an HR for human resources director, human resources manager. Your first job, not your first job, but I think I remember you being a barista in college. Can you talk about your barista
Well,
career
that
and
far back.
then
Oh,
yeah, way back, but your
yeah. I
barista career and
mean,
like how that merged into your HR stuff?
yeah. Well, hi, Amani. Hi, and Mandy. Thanks for having me. This is super fun.
Yeah,
Gosh, we're going way back before
way back.
HR. So I mean, my roots are all in hospitality. So like you, Mandy. So I was the head cashier of a pizza restaurant all through high school. Super fun. I graduated. I went to school for hospitality at a little school called Washington State University. I
Pullman,
was
Pullman, Washington.
Pullman, Washington. My daughter's there now, and she's a sophomore.
Nice.
And I just really leaned into all things hospitality. I was a banquet captain all through college. I had those amazing internships that you hear about. One was at a Jewish country club up in upstate New York. I'm managing a restaurant. One was up in the mountains in Lake Arrowhead at a resort. I mean, I really tried to, work the gamut of hospitality. And then I actually went into operations in hotels. I got really lucky I was a young 22-year-old. And I got placed at the Westin St. Francis, this amazing hotel up in San Francisco where I was a management trainee. And I was, in the couple of years I was there, I was managing everything from all the dishwashers in the hotel to a French restaurant called Victor's up on the 32nd floor to a disco. When they had discos, it was called Oz. It was super fun. It's
Oh
those
my
guys.
God.
a lot of bad things I think happened at Oz. A cocktail bar, an afternoon tea place. I mean, a sports bar. It was really great. But then I decided I wanted to go into HR. So, and that's because, that hotel was a very busy union hotel. And somehow at a very young age, the HR team, I was a management trainee, so they knew me, kind of took me under their wing. And I was that go-to person who somehow could get the trust of the employees and have some clout with the union. And I'd be that go-to person who could handle employee relations. So it was so exciting to me at, my early 20s that it prompted me to want to make a career in HR. And so instead of just working my way up the HR ladder, which is a great way to do it, which most people do, I decided to go become a lawyer and then take that approach and go into HR with a JD. And I figured that would kind of elevate my career and give me a little, a step up in terms of knowledge. So to answer your question, in law school, I became a barista at Gonzaga University on campus. So I did that all through law school. In fact, I couldn't even get away from hospitality. I became a lawyer, and at night I waited tables at a restaurant in Seattle because I love restaurants and hospitality so much that it's hard to to shake that when it's part of your kind of DNA. So I've done it all, I think, in that world.
No. You know what? Oh yeah, you go, Monty. You go.
I want to follow up because what was the inspiration behind going to law school? Like, what inspired you to go to law school?
Well, I was, I'm a strategist. I pride myself on planning and strategy, and I actually give myself a pat on the back at a young age to acknowledge that. And this is no slam on MBAs or any other degrees, but I knew that as a young 20-something who wanted to get into HR and just kind of waiting for that opportunity to get my foot in the door, I thought that with a JD, it would give me one up. And I wanted to go back to school, and I figured an MBA would be great. But I think in that business, I would have had to kind of go back into the hotels and work my way up. So I thought a JD would be great education because I like to learn. And I thought, now I know a lot of lawyers, friends of mine who've transitioned into HR. I did it differently. I went to law school to go into HR and went right into it. So it was a strategic plan, Amani, to help me with my HR career.
Got it. Okay. Mandy, back to you. I'm sorry.
Well, you said something though that brought something up for me, because right now in the hospitality industry, obviously we're all dealing with unions. Unions have always been there. We know that, but now more than ever. So when was your first labor negotiation that you dealt with, and what was the outcome? I mean, how long ago was that? And like, what were some successes on that?
I mean, I like employee relations. I like to be that person that the employees can come to, and I like the person the manager can talk to, and management, and kind of be in the middle to find a win-win. I try to find win-wins for any problem thrown my way. But it was at the St. Francis. I was not doing labor negotiations, but I was being pulled into a lot of employee relations issues. I think it was when I then after law school, I became a lawyer for a couple of years just to get a little experience, and then I did what I wanted to do, what I sought out to do, which was go back to hotels, but in human resources. So when I was in Seattle, I was with Westin, then Starwood, which is now Marriott. But for a couple of years in Seattle, I kind of became the union guy, or the employee relations guy. So or person. And so I did negotiations for the 5 unions at the Westin Seattle. And I also worked with the non-union hotels to kind of, be harmonious and be non-union. So I kind of was used however the situation was. So that was my first experience. Later on, at the San Diego Zoo, I did it for 13 years. I did every single contract and mediation that was thrown my way. So I have a long experience in labor relations.
Yeah. What advice do you have right now for people in HR functions that the collective bargaining agreement's about to renew, or, they've got a union on the horizon? Like, what advice do you have to help them get through it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is just union related, but I think that, in HR, we're all about the company culture and the culture of our organization. And I think that it's really sometimes falls upon the HR team to be the ones to lean in and help leadership and help the whole organization change the culture. I think that coming out of what we've gone through with COVID and the pandemic, things have changed. And so I think all of us in HR should be looking at ways to have this great culture. And And I'd say, to answer your question, a couple things I would focus on is, what are you doing in your DEI, but also add a B to that. So which is diversity, equity, inclusion, but also belonging. So how are you having employees, establishing a connection and having employees feel connected and feel like they belong to the organization, training your leaders to listen and be open to listening and positivity. I mean, that would go a long way, I think, in all employee relations. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but flexibility is a big thing. And anything you can do to support a work-life balance and flexibility on where, when, how you work, connections with your employees, especially if you're in a hybrid or a remote workplace or even on site. But are you building those connections and getting your team together regularly and checking in on people and their mental state and all that? And then I think just, working on people want to know that the company is looking out for them. So is there career opportunities? Is there avenues for feedback that goes both ways between employee and management? I think to answer your question, I would really focus on strengthening your culture, whether you're union or non-union. I think the point is to have some really harmonious workplace and also just create a really great place to work,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love that.
I want to go to your books, and I want to ask you first, with everything that you were doing, working, there you go, there's the book right there. Yes.
A perfect 10 cookbook, party edition.
How are you able to make time to write 2 books? Because many people
Three
can't
books.
even get 3 books, excuse me.
Yeah.
3 books.
There's
4?
a 4th one coming out. Sorry, go on to answer your question.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go with 4. Let's go with the 4 then. How are you able to make time? Because many people struggle just to get one book done. They have the idea, they know they want to write it, and then you can't get it done, but you've done it 4 times.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at the San Diego Zoo as CHRO for 13 plus years, and it was an amazing experience. I cherish every moment of it, and I think that's where the first book came around. It was the zoo was approaching its centennial 100-year birthday, and so myself and another consultant thought, let's celebrate that. And how is the zoo managed to weather all the storms over the 100 years and come out ahead on so many different factors and lean in to their employees and create a great place to work. So that's how we wrote the first book. So that book was kind of a work project because it was all done on behalf of my employer, the San Diego Zoo Global. And so that I kind of did, in my spare time, but it was all for the zoo.
Tell us, that book is Roar. Tell us about what
it's called Roar, How to Build a Resilient Organization the World Famous San Diego Zoo Way. So we created a model in that book of resiliency that I still use it, now, which is several years later. And we looked at what the zoo had done so well, in the past. At the time, it was, I guess, 97 years. And because it took me a while to get the book together. And we put a resiliency model that any employer, any team, any person could follow just to strengthen, resiliency. So that was called Roar, and it did pretty well. And so I think, Amani, the question probably is how do I do side projects now and kind of these when I still have a full-time, role that I do. And for me, it was I've always had in my mind all these ideas, and that's kind of, I think, the theme of the second, if you call this half of my life now is, and it really took the pandemic, I think, to kind of spur this creativity. And I had all these ideas in my head. I wanted to write books. I wanted to write plays. I love theater, and I've never been involved with the creative side. I've been on boards and donations, things like that, development, but I have all these ideas for plays and movies and TV shows. And I've been saying I was going to write a screenplay forever. I've never done it. So it was when the pandemic hit, and and once we started quarantining, and once I realized that, I'm going to be working from home. I never worked from home. And not only that, but I'm going to be stuck at home, for all this time. And that's when everyone started working on, sourdough or this or that, or drinking, whatever it was. I wanted to use my time different and cross a few things off my bucket list and say, this is my chance, if ever, to get a couple of the ideas out of my system and get them out there for people. The first one was to write a cookbook. And I've been cooking forever, as long as I can remember. Thanks, Mandy. That one just came out last month. So I started kind of looking at my recipes and curating more recipes and putting things together. And actually, before the cookbook, then I started with a play. I should go backwards. So in 2020, when we started really, realizing the quarantine was going to not be a quick thing, then I thought, this is my chance to write a play for the first time in my life. And so I spent all of 2020 and a little bit of 2021 just getting this idea out that I had in my head forever about writing a scary play, because I love plays. There's been some scary ones that I've seen or try to be scary. I don't think they quite lived up to it. Sorry. But so I just kind of, I literally got online and said, how to write a play. I got the format, what's the format for a playwright. And I just kind of storyboarded the story out based on, write what you know. I wrote about my hometown. I wrote about my family, Sean and I, my partner and our daughter. And I threw us into this hometown that I'm from, which, has its quirks, let's say. And so I wrote a very scary play about my hometown. So that was the first thing I did. I got that done. I pitched it. It's kind of exploded from there. But then once that got done, I then jumped into project number 2, which was kind of the second year of the pandemic, and started working on the cookbook. So that's when I went back to my publisher from the Roar days. Said, hey, I'd like to do a cookbook. I know you want me to do another business book, another leadership book. I want to do something more creative right now. And so, I think the timing is right. He's like, yeah, my publishing company needs a cookbook, So, so all the stars kind of aligned, and I just started working on this cookbook. I cooked for a year. I played with all the recipes. I gained 1 million pounds, and I just had a lot of fun at home quarantining, cooking. And the first cookbook came out and did well. So I think to answer your question, it was because of the quarantining experience that I had, evenings free, weekends free. My kids were getting older. I didn't have, we weren't driving kids around all the time, and so I just used that time in a creative way, and it really, I'd say, kind of, I don't know, opened the floodgates. So I wrote the first cookbook, got it published. It did much better than we all thought it would do, and the publisher asked me to write a second one. So the second one just came out, and I'll talk about the fourth one in a little bit. But that's because no one knows about that yet. But so these 2 cookbooks have now come out. So 3 years ago when COVID hit, I was turning mid-50s. I was a working executive. I had none of these things. Now, flash forward to 2023, and I've had a play launched. It's coming to New York in April. It's playing in a couple of places next year. It had a great run in San Diego. I've had 2 cookbooks come out. I have a graphic novel coming out. I mean, these are things that really just, I think once I kind of made the space in my calendar and my schedule and my mind and my family and to do this, I've been writing like crazy ever since.
Yeah. What's your writing process? Is it like same time of day, in the morning? Do you go on retreats? How do you handle the writing process?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I think that it was really easy during quarantining because I was, for various reasons, we had a place in Palm Springs, and we hadn't moved. I was living in Seattle, and we were 100% remote, and I was quarantining down in Palm Springs with my daughter, who was doing high school from afar. So I had a lot of free time to myself. I have to be locked in somewhere with no outside distractions. I can't have anything else in my mind. I can't have other people asking things, and I really need to block the time in my calendar and write. So that's kind of my process. Now that it's we're not in that world anymore, I have to really kind of think about it. For me, it's the weekends. The weekends is my time, and I get as much done as I can. I will plug away sometimes at night, but I'm more of a morning person. So I can get up at 7 o'clock with a cup of coffee and knock out about 3 hours of writing, and that's probably my process. If I'm home alone during the day, I'll do it during the day, on the weekends as well. But I have to have complete quiet and no distractions, and I can't write with the TV on or music. I just need my mind in it, and so I need to make that space for it to work.
I'm the same way too. Lockdown. I have to be in complete silence and just go, let it go. Okay, really quick. I just want to go through the roster of your creative adventures here. So, Roar is Tim's first book. Second book is A Perfect 10 cookbook. Now, Amani, I know you have the book, but here's what I love about this book is, first of all, I love cookbooks, but the Perfect Tent, the first cookbook, what I love about it is, and I want to ask you about this, Tim, is there's stories to each recipe. So it's like Aunt Linda's this, or like there's a memory. And I think like when we commune together and we sit down at a table for a meal, that's just like love, right? There's so many memories and experiences that surround that. So like when you were putting together the format of the cookbook, were you always going to tell stories of family and friends and things like that? Or how did that come to be? Because I think that's one of the most unique things about your cookbook.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I don't, by no means am I a trained chef. I'm definitely a home cook, and I wrote these books with the home cooks in mind. People like myself who may work during the day, they have kids, they have, or not, but just that's a busy life and don't have enough time, don't have a lot of time to just toil in the kitchen, which I wish I did. So I am but to answer your question, I have been that odd child up till now who keeps the family traditions, if there are any alive, who finds a recipe from an aunt or a neighbor or a friend's mom that you loved, you continue to make it over the years. I collect them all. I have them all archived in these crazy notebooks that are very organized and clipped out and cut and taped. And so I could tell you where each one of those recipes came from, and then I've, some of them are just exactly as it was given to me. This is what I put on the page, but many of them I've tweaked, I've perfected, I've substituted, I've made healthier or not healthier, whatever it might be. But these are recipes. I feel good putting my stamp of approval on these recipes because I've made them so many times. And I wanted to just put it really easy for those people that aren't great cooks. Just read what I put on the page and do step by step by step, and this great thing's going to turn out. So yeah, each recipe does have a story. And I thought that was important to say where they came from, because some of them I go back as far as me being a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, as a sugar cookie recipe I got from a babysitter, this this elderly woman who babysat for me for a long time when I was really young. And somehow I still have that recipe. I have a bunch of other, recipes like that. So, I don't think it's unique for people to tell a story in their cookbook. So, but I just wanted to give a little bit of history about where that came from and why I make it like I do, or what's the traditions behind it,
Yeah, I love that. And then I think fast forward to the second cookbook, the Perfect Tent Party Edition. Now, this book is so fun because you take actual parties. So it's like if you're having an Oscar party or an award show party, here's all the recipes you need. Or if you're having a birthday party, here's all the recipes you need. So how did you pick the types of parties that you were going to do for that particular cookbook?
Yeah. So for the first cookbook, I didn't know how to organize. I just want to throw a bunch of recipes in a book and call it the Tim book. So I actually decided to do my meal period. That's where the name came from. So I took 7 meal periods: breakfast, lunch, dinner, soup, appetizer, entree. The perfect Thanksgiving meal, by the way, if you're looking. And then I did my top 10 recipes, go-to recipes, so that if anybody's ever asked, hey, Mandy, bring a salad, or Mandy, bring a dessert or an entree, or that you're not frantically thinking, what am I going to do? So now you just grab my book and make one of these 10, you'll be fine. The second cookbook, I love throwing parties. I've been throwing parties my entire life, whether they're little parties for a couple of friends, whether it's birthday parties, whether it's family holidays, whether it's work parties. As Mandy, as you can attest to, I'm usually the party planner at where I work. If parties for 2,000 people, parties for 100, whatever it might be. So I thought for this next book, I would just lean into that. And so I chose 7 parties, the same format, and a perfect 10 kind of roadmap for each party. And I chose for each one, like maybe it's a birthday party or a happy hour or a pool party. This one I threw in 2 cocktails, a couple appies, a couple salads, a couple entrees, a couple desserts, and there you go. Follow this list party. If it's a smaller party, just make a couple of them. Pull from this party, pull from this one. But I really just wanted to make it really easy because I think a lot of people get stressed out by, oh God, I have to plan a party, or I have to do this, or it's someone's birthday, or it's an anniversary. It shouldn't be stressful. And I tried to pick out recipes that you can make in advance. They won't, because you don't want to be cooking. At least I don't want to be cooking and during a party. I want it all to be ready to go.
Yeah,
so
you want to entertain. Yeah,
so I can have fun. So that was all top of mind for me in choosing recipes that I would use. And so I chose. And not only did I chose these 7 parties, I actually threw the parties earlier this year. So I threw the parties at different locations, invited small groups, photographed it, and those pictures and stories are all in the cookbook.
So great.
Mm.
So great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
With your hand in so many different creative activities, what do you do to recharge your creative battery?
Ooh, Amani.
Um, well, a couple things. I think one is it's a great question. I don't have a canned or even a thought of answer, but I think that one thing I do, I'm a sponge for all things pop culture. So I think in terms of the plays and the stories I'm writing, the graphic novel, that sort of stuff, I'm always seeing. Now I look at it at kind of a discerning eye, like, what did they do there? Or what could they have done there? What could I do with that? So I'm always, I'm always reading. I'm always watching the latest, streaming the latest things, going to the movies. I'm always taking things in. For the food thing, I'm just a total foodie. I mean, you don't want to know how many restaurants I've been to in the past 3 days here in New York. I mean, so I'm always seeing what's out there, and even for the cocktails, like I love going to. We have some friends who like to travel around and always go to the top 50 bars in the world and see how many we can, knock off. I knocked off 3 this week. So I like to see what's happening in mixology and, food and beverage. And so I think that to answer your question, I don't think I'm resting and recharging. I think I'm actually taking as much in as I can. And that's my recharge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And then kind of the little brother or little sister of that question is like, what is something that scares you?
Oh God! Speaking I'm not a huge fan of it scares me to. I don't like to speak on video and in public too much. So what really scared me during the cookbooks was having to do live cooking demonstrations on news channels, which is my worst nightmare. And I did a couple of them. It was horrifying. But I think not a lot. I think that's part of my. Not a lot scares me. I think that part of my new kind of mantra, I'd say, of coming out of what we went through with the pandemic. I mean, everybody experienced it it came out differently. I came out just charged up like a different person. Like I said, I'm no spring chicken. I just turned 56. I made some big moves last year. I took a job in LA in an area that I had a world that I had never worked in before. And so for me, right, I came out of the pandemic just wanting to say yes to things that I would have said no to in the past, and being open to taking risks. And if there were things I was afraid of, just going with it and rolling with it, and kind of stepping out of my comfort zone as much as I can, and not being afraid to say that I've been in HR 25 years, but why don't I just pretend like I'm starting over right now, fresh. I'm taking all I've learned and what I've learned the last couple of years, and I'm a new person, and I'm applying it in a new way with a new energy. So I think that there were things I was afraid of perhaps in the past, but I'm trying to live a life now that's open to everything.
I like it. Since you mentioned risks, we have to ask, and maybe you could say the last 5 years, what's the biggest risk you've taken, and how did it work out for you?
Yeah, God, there's been several. I think, I'd go back a little bit longer. I think that,
okay.
I'm lucky to say that I had a dream job forever. Working at the San Diego Zoo was like an HR leader's dream come true. It was amazing. I loved everybody there. I'm friends with everybody I worked with to this day, I think. And it's one of those companies, I think, that especially because of all the stuff we put in place, that people don't leave. I think, especially leaders or managers, you just kind of work there till you retire, which is a great testament. So I'd say when I got a phone call to give it up, take my kids out of high school and junior high, leave the city that I love, which was San Diego, which I thought I'd never leave, and move back to a town that I am from, Washington State, that I never thought I'd go back to, in an industry working in tech that I never thought I would go to. I think it was a big risk, but it took a big leap of faith. And I just crossed my fingers I was doing the right thing for me and my career, for me and my family, and kind of going back and, because Mandy knows I have a huge community and network around me in San Diego that I built over 17 years. And I kind of gave it all up and moved for this amazing experience. And that was a big risk. And I think it's paid off in many, many ways for me, mostly professionally. And I think it also paid off for my family as well, but in terms of experiences. So that was a risk. And then, coming back down and taking a job in LA, I think that was a risk as well. So I think I've made a couple. I'm not the kind of person who jumps jobs very often. I've been in HR for 25 years, and I'd say, and the first, 17 of them were with one company, 2 companies, so I made a couple career moves in the past 7 years that I think were probably the riskiest that I've ever done.
I think Tim's being a little modest, which is awesome. But could you tell the audience who it was that made that phone call to you to have you suggest that you leave San Diego and go to Seattle?
Well, it was a headhunter, but I think once I got with they wouldn't tell me what the job was. All they told me was that, would you come back to Seattle and leave the zoo? And I said, no, I wouldn't actually. I'm pretty happy here. But,
Right.
and they said, well, we can't tell you a lot, but do you know who Paul Allen is? And I'm like, yeah, Paul Allen. He's like Santa Claus in Seattle. We all love Paul Allen. So I got the really great opportunity to be his CHRO. So it's to fly up and interview with him, the team at Vulcan. And it was just a great move in many, many ways.
And that started your tech career, because then can you tell us a little bit about Ben Labs, which is where you're at now, which is a deployment from what most of us know how to do or understand, but is a real cutting edge company. So can you talk about that?
I mean, it was great. So I had a big chunk in hospitality. I had the 13 years at a nonprofit, doing all those great experiences I had at San Diego Zoo Global. And then Vulcan, working for Paul Allen. Vulcan really was just, the vision, the mission of Vulcan was or Paul Allen was to solve the world's toughest problems using technology and data. And so it was, we weren't a for-profit, we were kind of a nonprofit, but we operated museums, and I opened up a cool hotel in LA, and we had the Seattle Seahawks and the Portland Trailblazers and all this tech work, tons of tech for good. So it wasn't, we weren't monetizing it. We were doing great things in the world with technology. So I think the last year I spent focused on one area of the Paul Allen umbrella, which was the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence. A lot of great, AI breakthroughs. And that I think is what got me on the radar for the call from the recruiter for the Ben job. Ben Labs is owned by, is unique because I worked for Mr. Allen, who was a co-founder of Microsoft. Obviously, his other co-founder is Bill Gates. He owns Ben Labs. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity was really cool to work a different side of the AI spectrum, which is in the entertainment industry and advertising. And I'd never worked in those really. I mean, on the periphery, I'd say with Vulcan, we made documentaries and stuff. But so Ben Labs, based out of LA, uses some really state-of-the-art AI tools to mine data for products and companies, and also look at who's watching what, who's buying what are people's preferences, and also doing things like product placement and how do you match using our AI tool to match a brand with a product with the right streaming platform or movie or music video, or lead into influencer marketing and work with creators and influencers and matching them with the right product. So that's, I think it's just another weird part of my career that's taking on and learning things that I'm not familiar with, but I'm trying to master the best that I can,
Yeah. What were maybe some of 3 of the most valuable lessons you learned while working with Paul?
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot. I mean, we a time together, I should say, because I think about 2 years into me being the CHRO, he passed away. But he was, I always loved working with him. I think that him and his sister, and also just the CEO at Vulcan, Bill Helf, is amazing. He's still there. It's a different company now. But I think that he just I appreciated lots about him. I think that he didn't take no for an answer, which I like that. I think there's a solution to everything. I mean, he takes it a lot more extreme than I did, but that's kind of how I go about in my life. That I think there's a good best path for everything. He was not afraid to take risks, I think, and that's important to me as well. So that's a big lesson. And just to do good things, in the world, and for him, in philanthropy, to take, your opportunities you have and do good things with them, and I think that all really resonated with me.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, well, Mandy, we're at the point of the show where it's time for Tim to ask us each a question. So Tim, you can ask Mandy a question, and you can ask me a question, and then we have to answer. And there's pretty much no holds barred. So who would you like to ask a question to first?
Mandy.
Yes.
Well, I've been talking about, and this isn't real planned, but I'm just thinking, I'm thinking about how the 2020 to 22 have, the pandemic years really changed my outlook and refired, recharged me in so many different levels. What's different about you and your career and life choices coming out of this strange time in this pandemic for you?
I love this question. It's funny that you asked because as you were saying how you got recharged out of 2020, I was recharged out of 2020, like where people were drinking in their driveways or putting their head in the sand, waiting for it to end. I just kept feeling like I'm going to be a student of the crisis. I'm going to learn everything there is to know about this. I'm going to form really deep relationships. I'm going to get creative. And the only thing that I can control is my mind and my reaction to all this stuff. I can't control all this awful stuff that's happening around us. I can't control my business failing at that time. I can't control anything, but what I can control is how I react to it. So, and I think I carried that with me. And I also think my empathy score would be higher today than it was in 2019 because I feel like all of our friends in hospitality, they were getting laid off, or if they happened to still be working, they were the only one working at a hotel, and they used to be an executive, but now they're like cleaning up vomit out of a stairwell, or they're checking people in, or valet parking cars. So I think it was a really humbling time for a lot of people. And I was so grateful to not be at on a hotel, but I was working with those people, doing contracts and stuff. And I was like, gosh, like that would suck to be that. And it would be, I'm glad I'm not doing that, but how does that feel? And so I think like my empathy muscle was really developed, stretched, strengthened during that time. And I think coming out of it, I'm still there. Like I'm still trying to think about, wow, like how does that feel to be this person right now? Especially experiences that I don't have. Like my husband and I are free, right? And so a lot of our friends went through a kid crisis during that time, whether they were homeschooling or just home together. And even though I can't understand what that feels like because I'm not a parent, I was put into a space where I was like, well, what does that feel like? If I was a parent, what could that feel like? How do I have anything in my life that I can compare that to? So I think coming out of it, I'm definitely recharged, obviously, with all the stuff that I've got going on. But I think as a human being, I became way more empathetic. And I just think my mindset is way more grounded, way more strong than it's ever been before because of COVID, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, totally different. We'll go away from leadership for Imani. I'll start with a shameless plug, which I'll turn into a question. So when I set out to write Witchland, which is my play that the first play, and I've written 3 or 4 since then that I'm now trying to launch and get going. My goal with that was to get people who make people have fun in the theater, and I have a lot of people in my world who don't like plays. To be honest, they just don't go to plays. I have to drag them to plays. And so I tried to write a play kind of for them, a play that any person would like to go to. So my question for you is, so as I'm writing new plays, like what kind of live theatrical play experience would get you super pumped? And how can I get Imani excited to go to a theater?
Ooh.
For me, it would have to be like, I think that I watch like movies and stuff that kind of take place in like high school or college to talk about kind of younger life with some like lessons added in. And like that would be cool with like all centered around a love story. I'm a hopeful romantic.
Oh, Money.
The theme by around a love story with good music, diverse cast, interesting plot lines. Like that would inspire me to go see a musical, especially like the music and the singing part and things like that. That would really, really kind of get me excited to attend.
I'd say maybe I'm checking 3 out of 5 of those boxes, perhaps. But it's really interesting as I'm trying to, launch a career, a second side career as a playwright. It's really interesting to me to see what people get excited about.
You should have Imani DJ at the at some of your events. Like keep it fun.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about Witchland though, because to me, so full disclosure, I went to see the Witchland play in San Diego around this time last year. And I love to go to the theater, and I've been to tons and tons and tons of plays. I have never been to a play like this before. And for me, what I liked about it, and I want to ask you about this, Tim, is like when you first walked into the theater. So normally, you go to a play, you get a stale cookie, you get whatever, you hang out for a little bit, they ring the bells, you go in. It starts when you go in, when you file in and you sit in your seat. Witchland started outside the theater. Like there were people dressed up. It felt like a haunted house. There were people dressed up. You got inside. There were things happening in the lobby area. It was extremely immersive. And then you went into the play, and it was a great play, like a very well written play. But then there's all this immersive experience. So Tim, I want to ask you, like, when you were writing the play, how did you decide to make it immersive? And did that evolve from the street to the foyer to the play, or how did that go down?
It's a perfect question. I think that, I had the story in my mind is, I'm from a town in Eastern Washington called Richland, Washington. Born and raised there. I love Richland, Washington. My friends and family a lot of them are still there. There's no secret that it's a somewhat clouded with mystery, and that's where the Hanford nuclear reactor is. And there's a big cleanup of all these millions of gallons of, toxic waste, and people have been sick, and there's lawsuits. Just Google Richland, Washington, Hanford lawsuits or Hanford cleanup, whatever. So I thought it'd be really fun to write a story about that. I also wanted to write a really scary play. I went to a play in Seattle. This is what inspired me. A few years ago with my brother, and it's a play that had run in London for decades. It's not that hard to figure out if you know theater, what it was. And it played in Seattle, and people in the audience was sold out, were just giddy. All these, Seattle, a lot of grown-ups were just excited to be scared in the theater. And I was looking around thinking, oh my God, this place is packed. And then the play came on, and I liked the play, but any little thing that happened, everyone in the audience would scream. And so I was like, this is what scares them, so let me really scare them. So you start writing a play that you want to scare people, and you have to think about, okay, there's jump scares, things jump out and you scream, that's a jump scare, and that's the easiest way to do it. But I think in a live theater, I started thinking, how do you use the space more? Because let's have some jump scares, of course, but can I also have people grabbing my feet and like walking behind me and scaring me, and like you're just on edge the whole time? And so I wrote a play about a family that kind of gets stuck in some controversy around the nuclear waste and possibly a witch. And so I just thought about, to answer your question, Mandy, how do you use the space? You got to find a theater company. And for me, it was this company, Backyard Renaissance, was the first one who did it for a big, long run in San Diego. But how do you use the space so when people were on edge from the second they walked in that theater? And so they had to sign waivers outside that scared them, like they're going into a nuclear reactor in this little theater in San Diego. They really thought they were. And then you get in the lobby, and you have actors walking around in hazmat suits with Geiger, counters, and people were just terrified. So you got them, and then you get them in there, and then you got to think about, where can I have witches or scary things happening down the aisle? Where can I plant some people in the audience to scare people that things happen? Where can, on the stage itself, we can have people coming in and out of different places? So I think that was the challenge and the fun, I think, of creating, immersive experiences are really popular right now in theater. A lot of them you walk around and stuff, but how do you do that how can you go and sit in a seat and go to play, like you said, and just be on edge the whole time? And that's where you have to get really creative. So Witchland, I think, that was my goal. Now I have a new one coming out that's done called Snitchland, about it's a ghost story about the same place, but about whistleblowers and people trying to bring forth safety concerns, because there's been a lot of it. So and I'm doing the same thing. How can I make this one different? A little more drama, a little more suspense, but also scary. And the reason I'm doing that also is because book number 4, Witchland, is now, I've converted to a graphic novel, which is looking really beautiful. I'm not the artist. I wrote it all. I storyboarded it all. I hired a graphic artist out of Mexico, and this book comes out in January, and it's might be the best thing I've ever done. It's really, really beautiful. And so that's coming out. And then Snitchland is now, besides being a play, will be a graphic novel that'll come out later in 2024 as well. So, I'm onto a series of graphic novels now as well. So just, I'm always thinking, what else can I do,
Yeah. What were the 3 boxes that checked off from what I was looking for within your play?
Well, there's diversity. I mean, a lot of it's about diversity. It's about a gay couple who moved to a town that's not used to that, and also their African American daughter, they're not used to that. And so there's that. She's in high school, so I think I checked that one off of it. There's kind of a love story, but there's possession involved, so it might be weird. So yeah, I wish it was a musical. I love musicals, but I mean, believe me, I'm already thinking, how can I turn which into a musical? So I think a couple of your boxes are checked there, Monty.
All right, I like it. So I'm gonna borrow. I love to borrow from people who I admire in the interview space, and this I'm borrowing from Jay Shetty. And so these 2 questions. First of all, what's the best advice you've ever heard or been given?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would think we all have good mentors in our life and people that have made a difference. I go back to my first boss in the hotel industry. And she took me under her wing. And I remember she pulled me aside once and gave me a couple. I mean, it's more about customer service and positivity, and just gave me this pep talk about how to succeed in this industry. And it stuck with me, and my entire career changed after that, I think. So it was, how do you not just be in there in the room, but also talking to the guests and the way you talk to your employees. And she was just a great role model, but she gave me this rah-rah speech one day that has really stuck with me. And so now in my life, I try to really never let anything get me down. I try to not have negativity in my life or stress in my life. And I'm trying to lead more of an energized, grateful and uber positive existence. And a lot of it, I think I take back to her. As for another person who gave me advice like that, I don't know. I mean, I think that I've always tried to carry myself with based on that experience. And the other one I think is going back to kind of my high school days. And I got advice from a step parent, and it was more like, and it was kind of a mean advice, like, why don't you do it yourself? So I've been trying to do it myself. And I came out that day thinking, I'm smart. Why am I, just because I'm 17, why do I have to need someone else to buy me a stamp or do this or that or give me a ride somewhere? So I feel like I'm just always now taking the bull by the horns, if that's the right phrase, and not waiting for others to do anything for me. And I make things, if I want to do something, I'm going to make it happen, and no one else is going to do it for me. And that's advice that I've sat with that for a long time.
Well, while we're on the advice question, I want to ask, because like you said, you're mid 50s, and a lot of times this is when people are like, I'm thinking about retirement, or I'm exhausted, I want to slow down, or they might feel stuck and they don't know what's next. So what advice do you have for people looking at that second half of their life, thinking about, how do I be like Tim 2.0? How do I just say I'm just getting started? Like, what advice do you have for that second part for people out there
I
that
think
don't know what to do?
That's a good question. I think that I would say that what I am learning is that you're never too old or, far into your career. Like I said, I've been in HR for 25 years now. I'm now 56, and I'm just now starting these things like from day one. And so, I don't think you're ever too old or too far in your career, like I said, to reinvent yourself and do things you've always wanted to do but have never done. So I think there's that. I think coming out of tough times, obviously the pandemic was a tough time, but I think that we all have tough times just, mentally or in a relationship or in life or at work. And if you can find a way to come out of the tough times, supercharged, in what you want to do, with your career, with your life, with projects and innovation, that I think that helps. And I think that, you can be an old dog and be taught lots of new tricks. And that's what I'm opening myself up to. I mean, look, besides the books and everything else I'm doing, I'm trying to experience things I never thought I would do at this age. Like this year I went to Coachella for the first time. I just went to the Austin City Olympics. I've never been to Austin before. Yes. I went on a Viking River cruise this summer is on my list. So I think I'm not saying you can do all the things you wanted to do in your life all at once, but start just having a positivity in your life and saying yes to things that you have shut down the door on that thought it's never going to happen. Yeah. And the last thing I would say, and I think my family would attest to this, is that I'm not a good person to sit around and talk about old stories, because I'm always thinking about the future, So I think for me, it's always like, these stories are great, but how can I be creating new memories? we can't always rely on the stuff we did in the past. Let's be creating new stuff that we can talk about 5 years from now. So, and I always keep that in mind.
Love that.
Now, flip side of the advice question, what's the worst advice you've ever heard or been given?
Oh my God. Oh God. I don't know if there's a specific. I think anything that, goes to you can't do this or you shouldn't do this or, focus on this or don't do that. I think that never sits well with me because negativity isn't a part of my life. And so when there's people around me that are negative, whether it be a boss or peers of mine or employees or just people that I know or friends, it just doesn't land well with me. So I think, I don't know if there's been advice that was bad. Maybe there's been some financial advice I can think of. Maybe some real estate advice that didn't land well. But for life advice, it goes back to what my step parent thing earlier is that I've learned to shut a lot of advice out and do what I think is best for me and my situation and my family and plow forward and not worry about too much about advice from others.
Well done. Now, my final question is, if we could take Tim back to when he's just about to walk down the stage and graduate from Washington State and give him advice based on everything you know now, what advice would you specifically give your younger self?
Well, there isn't. I mean, I wish that I had leaned into the creative side a long time ago, believe me. I mean, so I think that, I would tell someone, that if they have things they want to do, there's your day career and then there's things you do with your life creatively. And I'd say to lean into your creative side, if you have some creative aspirations, don't wait until you're 56 to do something, for God's sake. Or you never do them probably, I mean, how many people do you know that said, I should write a cookbook. I should write a memoir. I should do this or that. Then just help them do it. There's so many ways to self-publish or to do, Mandy knows, just journaling or just do something or do a blog, just do something creative. And I think if I'd been told that at a younger age that I was going to have success in this, but not till I'm 56, I would have not waited 25 years,
Yeah. All right, Mandy, I'll let you kind of close us out. So take it away.
Well, I think we're going to need the final 3 minutes to list all the ways we can support Tim. So Tim, tell us how we can buy your books, how we can see your plays, where they're going to be, list it all off, all the things.
I just keep it simple. I think that for the play stuff, go to witchlandplay.com. There's information about all the graphic novels will be there. The plays are there. Witchland tickets are there, things like that. The cookbooks are on Amazon. I do have a website called A Perfect 10 Cook that has my blog. I do new recipes every week for the past year and a half. We just hitting 20,000 followers on my Instagram Perfect 10 page.
Awesome.
So I think there's kind of different ways. On Amazon, if you go to my Amazon books, there's an author page, gives you some history there as well. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we just appreciate you spending time with us today. And I'm particularly moved by just how you talked about how you wish you wouldn't have waited till you're 56 to pursue your creativity. So that's inspiring to people who are probably older than you that are going to take what you have said and start to go for it now. So I really appreciate you being vulnerable throughout the whole interview, but particularly with that point, because that's very timely. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the work you do as HR executive in the creative space. And we can't wait to support your upcoming endeavors.
Cool. Thank you so much. It was really fun.
Thanks for being here, Tim. You're the best.
Yeah, thank you.
A round of applause for Tim. We'll put you back in the green room. Here you go.
Thank you.
Yes. There you go, Mandy. Over to you. Next week's show, who do we have to look forward to speaking with?
Well, we have a man I've never met before. You know him, the chief brand officer from Meeting Professionals International, Drew Holmgreen.
Yes.
And I don't know him at all. I'm very excited to meet him. And, a ton of our audience are in the meeting planning, conference, hospitality industry. So I think everybody's curious to hear what he has to say.
Yes. So Drew's really cool, really smart, fun. So excited to sit down and talk with him. Bring your questions. I have lots of questions for Drew. It'll be a really, really cool interview. He'll be able to tell us some good stories. So that's good. Make sure for you listening, make sure that you rate and review us on Spotify or whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Make sure to follow our Adventures in Business Live LinkedIn page. Follow us on YouTube. Share this with a friend, and send us a note. Tell us what you think. And we look forward to seeing everyone next week, Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. on the West. Thanks to our guest today, Tim Mulligan. And Mandy, great to see you. And we'll see you in a week.
Good to see you too. See you next week.
Take care.